All right, welcome everyone to Great Growth Ideas. Get you ready for 2024. My name is Matthew Ferrara, as you know, and I'm so excited to see so many familiar faces and lots of new ones on today's session. So thanks for joining. For those of you who are new to any of these sessions, welcome aboard. They're fun, fast-paced, and full of ideas. More ideas than we possibly can cover, which is why we're also started to produce some ebooks from our content, and one of those is part of today's program. So if you want a copy of the ebook, 40 Ideas for Great Growth, there's a link in the chat room. There is a QR code on your screen. It was also in your invite, so you'll have an opportunity to download it multiple ways and multiple times in today's program. The ebook is also going to be present in the Substack, so that for those of you who are members of our Substack and those of you who have access to not only this ebook, but over 65 different posts and videos and our upcoming webinars and masterminds, it will be in there. But we've already got 3 others ready to be published into there as well. So lots of new additional content. And one thing we like about the ebooks is that they allow you to go offline, print them, or read them on your tablet at your own pace and continue the learning. So wanted to make that just a little reminder to you. You can always get that ebook throughout today's program and afterwards for sure. Again, if you are not a subscriber and you're just joined by one of the social links that we shared, we welcome you. If you're thinking of becoming a subscriber, that's a link to get you over to our Substack subscription page. I want to thank so many of you who are on the session here today who are subscribers. When we started 6 months ago with the Substack, it was a little bit of an experiment for us. We thought, we hope people like our writings and our production and our content. We're interested to see if we could help create a little community around it. And of course, that takes resources to do, and that's where your subscription makes it all possible. So thank you ever so much for all of you who are subscribers, and for those of you who are thinking of it, we would invite you to maybe give yourself an early holiday gift, make a little pre-end of the year investment in yourself for next year as well. It also makes a good gift. We do have a gift button on there, so if you want to share it with someone you know and love, that's also a possibility. All right, let's get right into the content here today, now that we've paid the bills with our little commercials there. But what are we talking about in our 40 ways for creating great growth? In the ebook, there are 40 different ideas, tips, trends, and marketing suggestions for you in terms of how to create growth throughout next year, and of course for many years to come. In today's session, I am going to focus on my 5 favorite ones for you. Now, these are good no matter where you are in your career. So whether you are just building your business, whether you need to give your business a boost, whether you're pushing against some headwinds, or if you're leading others, you want to share with others some ways for them to grow their business as a manager, as an owner, as a leader, etc. Please feel free to share all of these. But I would love to have done all 40 of them, but we would have had a 2-hour webinar, and instead I want to make this as fast and effective for you this morning. So we're going to start with the number 1 tip that I have for next year when it comes to great growth. And you'll find this tip in the first 7 that are in the ebook. And you can see the answer is already right there on the screen, because the first 7 tips are all focused on getting listing centric in 2024. Now, I know that many of you here are going to say, that's part of my business strategy already, to be listing centric. But I think that there is no better time than entering into 2024 to double check your balance when it comes to your listing to buyer ratio. And I'm going to talk about why in just a second here, but please don't misunderstand. I think there's lots of great work to be done with buyers, but we are still in a seller-centric marketplace, and many people that I talk to all around the world continue to tell me the same thing. We need more inventory. The only thing that creates inventory, my friends, let's just be clear about this. There's only one thing in the universe that creates inventory, and it's you. Okay, inventory doesn't naturally spring up. It's not like there's going to be a rainstorm and suddenly there's going to be inventory. The Fed can't create inventory. Policy can't create inventory. It is the activity of great salespeople who reach out to their sphere of influence and say, are you thinking about this? Do you have any questions about the marketplace? And how do I turn you into inventory for all the right reasons, for the top 10 reasons that people want to sell and also buy. So if we want to actually turn around the market next year, it is actually going to come from sales activities, not other things. Now, having said that, there are some good signs, some green shoots that we saw in the last couple of weeks. If you've been watching mortgage news, if you've been watching some inventory news out there, we're starting to see that these efforts pay off because people like you every single day are getting up and talking to potential sellers. And one thing we have to keep in mind is that by being seller-centric, you're going to put at least a dozen advantages, many of which are in the ebook, a dozen advantages in your business plan. But I'm just going to talk about the one I think is the most important going into 2024, which is that by bringing sellers into the marketplace, you are also creating what we call prepaid buyers. That's the coolest thing about working sellers, is that 50% of the time, you're also going to help that seller buy their next home. And they're prepaid because they've already paid you on the sell side. We don't have to worry about whether they'll sign an agreement, whether they will agree to compensation. They already know your value in that case. So while you can see, 5 different other reasons why you should be listing centric going into 2024, 90% of listings are still selling with less than 55 days on market. Listings are the things that create marketing. What's inside of all of these real estate portals on your website? Listings. What do people go look for online? Listings. That means with every listing, you're going along for the ride. Listings create signs. Listings create open houses. Listings create reasons for us to communicate to others. If you get a buyer, you're not exactly telling your sphere of influence that you have a buyer. You don't have a sign outside in a neighborhood that says, I've got buyers. So listings have all of these strategic advantages, but I think the most important one is that you will be lining up prepaid buyers. And that's important because even if we get some other positive forces, if mortgage rates start to fall, if there are other good reasons why people are going to move inventory into the marketplace, you want to be on the listing side of that equation, not the buyer side. If mortgage rates fall and buyers get excited again, that means more buyers are going to enter the marketplace, which means you have to be on the catching end of all of that traffic. You want to catch all those buyers coming in, and you do that by having the listing. So the absolute number one thing that I would think we all want to do to create growth next year is make sure that we are listing centric. In my experience, that's a 70-30 mix. You want to be at least 70% in the listing side of the business and 30% in the buyer side. By the way, let me just add one last thing before we move on to the next one, which is look at the last bullet point on here. If you are listing centric, you have just chopped 80% of your competitors out of your radar. And here's why. In almost every MLS that we look at around the country, about 75 to 85% of agents are buyer-centric, meaning that most of their day is spent running around with buyers. If you're running around talking to listings, you're competing with 15 to 20% of the other amazing agents in your marketplace. So you have narrowed your competitive field dramatically. Think about it like this. There's a great big pond, which you call your MLS, your marketplace, and everyone's got a fishing rod. Do you want to put your fishing rod in where 80% of the people are trying to catch 1 transaction, 2 transactions, 3 transactions? Or do you want to put your fishing rod over where 15% or 20%? So there are even just pure business competitive reasons why you're reducing the competitive noise, if you will, by being listing centric. So I think I've made my point. You'll probably be saying, I've generally had this philosophy anyways, but I need to double down, reinforce to you that I think that is the number one great growth opportunity next year, is to right size into listing centricity for all sorts of good reasons. Okay, number 2 thing that I think you're going to want to focus on next year for great growth, and this is coming out of tips 8 through 12 in the ebook, is what I like to call the did you know side of the marketplace. So did you know certain things about consumers that are going to impact your marketing strategy and your value proposition? Now, again, because I can't help myself, I put 5 things up on the screen here for you, but I'm only going to focus on one. You can screenshot this or take a look at the recording afterwards, and they're all in the book. But here's the thing. The number one most important thing I think we need to think about consumers going forward is that many of them are going to have a longer tenure in their home than ever before. So for 32 years that I've been doing this, 33 years, the average tenure was around 6 to 7 years. But right now, we're seeing now for the 5th year in a row, buyers and sellers telling us that they expect to stay in their home for over 10 years. In fact, over 50% of those buyers, which has caused this great skew in the average, over 50% said that they expected to stay in their home beyond that, 12 to 16 years. Now, why does that matter? Here's why. Because I want you to think about a marketing strategy that stays in contact much longer than the old turning rate of your market. The turnover rate of 3 to 7 years might have meant that we would market in a very different frame of mind. We would be talking a lot more about interest rates. We'd be talking a lot more about moving up periods. But what we're looking at is a very different consumer. The typical seller last year, which means also the typical buyer, right? Let's be clear. Sellers sell and then they buy. They're 60 years old. They have no children at home, and they have very high household income, an average of $111,000. Now, these are national averages. So I know some markets will be a little higher and markets will be a little lower. But the number one thing is we're talking about a consumer who's in a different cycle. Now, good news about that is that you are planting the seeds for your career for 5, 8, 10, 12, 15 years out. But on the other hand, it might mean that you need to go back and look at some of your sphere of influence and say, who haven't I been talking to in 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years? Because they might be entering that period where it is time to make that next move, whether it is for moving up purposes, whether it is retirement, maybe it's just from work from anywhere reasons. But who is buying homes today and who is selling homes today is a very different data point than we typically imagine. You know, we like to talk about the millennials all the time and Gen Z, and look, they're very important consumers, but they're not the typical consumer right now. They're under 30% of the market nationwide. Right now, we're talking about baby boomers and some Gen Xers with no kids at home who are going to buy that home and stay in it for a decade. And frankly, that doesn't mean that they don't have similar needs, but it might mean you're not talking about school systems and you're talking instead about walkability scores and local entertainment. It might mean you're talking about transportation issues and not, parks and recreation, etc. So really know your consumer. Now, where do you learn about these consumers? Of course, NAR just released this year's home buyer and seller profile. Many local state associations will have a state version of it. So go check out your state website and then get deep, because there are a lot of also very specific reports out there. The Asian Real Estate Association of America, the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, National Association of Real Estate Brokers, which study Black Americans' moving trends, the LGBTQ plus Alliance, all of these wonderful diversity market groups, they produce a lot of studies, and you can download almost every one of those studies for free. And so the cool part is, even if you're working a niche market, you're going to see that there are some research reports that are telling you who really is that typical consumer this year. Don't go with the cliches and don't go with the picture you might have had in your head from a few years ago. It has dramatically changed in the past couple of years. And I can see that Amber has just put a link in the chat room to the NAR research reports, and you can find a lot of these other reports from the main websites of those great groups. So that's two of my favorite things for creating great growth in 2024. Now, again, there are so many of them. It's hard for me to choose. I'm just trying to focus on the ones I think will make the biggest difference for you. But know your customer. You know what? Side note, one last thing. Go back and not only look at the last 20 deals you did, but talk to some colleagues in your office. You know what? Host a lunch and say to all of your colleagues, bring all your files, bring your laptop, and let's take a look at who you're helping buy and sell, because then you'll get a really hyper-local look at what's happening with the average age, the average income level, the average tenure in the home. Were they looking for homes for kids? Were they looking for homes for parents and grandparents? Really get in the know, I guess, is the real point of that tip, because your marketing message will have to change. If the average seller is 60 years old, $111,000 household income, is this the seller that we reach through TikTok or through texting? or through lunch meetings, right? Like those are just obvious decisions. It doesn't mean one's better than the other, but you can make those decisions by knowing for whom you are tailoring your value proposition and your communication strategy. All right, so that's 2 out of 5. Let's get to the third one now, if we can, really quickly. And this one comes from the tip area in the workbook, which we call What Others Won't Do. And this is an area that studies not the consumer, but the competitor. So here's a great opportunity now for you to take a look at what your competitor is doing and nudge yourself. So the National Association of Realtors not only puts out a study of buyers and sellers, they put out studies of you. They put out studies of colleagues just like you, smart real estate professionals who are out there growing their career, and they ask them like 123 pages worth of survey questions. What are you doing? How are you doing it? What did you spend, etc. Now, again, here are 5 items that you might want to take a look at, but the one I think is the most eye-opening in this year's report, my friends, the most eye-opening, is that 64% of people who answered last year's survey, well, this year's survey, it's done over the last 12 months, 64% of them said they spent $0 on lead generation. Now, my friends, I wish that weren't the case, but on one hand, I'm also thinking, wow, that's a pretty low bar for everyone on this call. If you spent $20 a week on lead gen, you would be ahead of 2 out of 3 of your real estate professional colleagues. Now, we wish them well, but we also wish to have a really good competitive opportunity to grab business out there. And most people just aren't spending any money on lead gen. Now, maybe that was because the market slowed down this year. Maybe that was because they never learned to do that, because we've had basically only an up arrow market for the past 5 years. Plus, during the pandemic, that arrow was very accelerated and people didn't have to market. They didn't have to do lead gen. But the bottom line is 2 out of 3 real estate professionals told the National Association of Realtors they're not taking any money out of their pocket to whatever, purchase SEO, purchase lead space, boost their posts on social media, whatever it happens to be. In fact, their professional development investment was also pretty low. You can see that right above it. Bottom line is, I think there are some small budgetary things you can do to try and create a opportunity to be ahead of your competitor. 49% said they weren't using video for professional reasons. 0%, literally 0 in the survey said they generated business from their open house. These are low-hanging fruit opportunities. And so I want you to also go download that NAR member profile report and go look for the eye openers in there. And I got to tell you, that biggest eye opener, the one that blew me away, is that there's just no budgeting for 2 out of 3 real estate professionals for lead generation. Now, that doesn't mean that some of them may not be getting some leads from their brokerage, may not be getting some leads from other mechanisms that they don't necessarily spend any money on, maybe some networking. But bottom line is, it wouldn't take a lot of budget to actually create a lot of traction out there. And there are some really good opportunities that do not require you to spend tens of thousands of dollars per month, but might be just a good, solid $100, $150 budget range that allows you to create consistency. I think there's a lot of lead gen out there. Now, as I've already indicated, I would strongly recommend that you emphasize listing lead generation, not buyer lead generation, right? The one thing you don't need more of, my friends, right now is buyers. Every listing will bring you all the buyers you want. You bring a listing, you're going to get buyers you didn't even know you had. Plus, the seller will be the buyer you know you have ready to go, because they're going to need another house when you sell their current home properly. So you'll always have all the buyers you ever need. So be careful when you're buying advertising and buying lead generation right now. You don't need more buyers. You need listing lead generation. And this means getting in front of people who want to know about their home value, want to know about move-up opportunities, want to know about finance opportunities, and who also, of course, have just ongoing life reasons, right? I think they're called like the 5 Ds: divorce, diamonds, all of the different reasons why people move. They're getting married, they're getting unmarried, they're having babies, diapers have to go in there. It's one of the Ds, right? So there's a lot of different reasons why people are moving. That's who you want to spend money getting in front of if you're going to try and get ahead of 2/3 of your colleagues. That's a nudge for you, and hopefully it's a small, affordable one. I just want to emphasize it won't take a lot of money to get out ahead of 2 out of 3 people in your marketplace. All right, now we're going to do a twofer on our next slide, right? So we've done our first 3. I've got 2 more. And thank you, Lou, for the 5 Ds. My brain went a little blank there for a moment. So you're right. It's death, diapers, diploma, divorces, and degrees, right? They graduate. So thanks, Lou. See, this is why it's so much fun having people that I know on these sessions, because I know that when I get stuck, someone's going to rescue me. So thank you, Lou Redbird, one of the smartest people I know, and I'm glad he's on today's call as well. All right, so we're going to do lead gen for listings. We're going to make sure that we're just nudging ourselves ahead of our competitors. We're going to know who we're talking to by studying the marketplace, absolutely, and we're going to be listing centric. Those are the first 3 we talked about. What's number 4 and what's number 5? Let's do them together real quick. Number 4 and number 5 are get smart and know the market, but a slightly twist on this, not the consumer, but know what forces are pushing the market forward. So what do they mean? Here we go. Get smart. Number 1, I want all of you to think about pre-purchasing 2 major learning events for your 2024. Now, they might be conferences, they might be educational events, they might be a national networking opportunity, they might be a state convention, but I want you to do it in December, actually. I want you to think about pre-purchasing it. Just pre-buy it, get it in this year's finance, in this year's budget, in this year's taxes, however you want to think about it, but know that it's on your schedule. Know that sometime in the spring and sometime in the fall, you have pre-committed to getting smart, whether it's a day, 2-day, 3-day event, but make sure these are on your calendar. I think that there is absolutely so much to be had in terms of learning, not only through whatever the education going on at those events is formally, but by bumping into colleagues, bumping into people that are doing things differently and interestingly and innovatively. That's also part of the educational aspect. So one of the most important segments in the ebook that we built is talking about ways you can get smart, ways you can invest in yourself. And the way I like to do it is I pre-purchase it so that I don't have to worry about should I, shouldn't I, will I have enough money when that comes to the deadlines. A lot of times, if you pre-purchase, you get some advanced discounts as well, so that's just good for your budget. But I really think about the commitment. I want to make the commitment to my education next year now so that I know that it is coming. And then the last of our 5 tips is understanding other market forces that are driving growth in your marketplace. So it's great to know who's buying, who's selling, what's happening with prices and absorption rates. That's the technicals of the transacted market. What I'm interested in is getting to know the demand. And one of the most interesting areas of demand that you can access faster than ever, I'm going to show you a screenshot in just a moment here, though, is the out-of-area consumer interest. Now, you can see that there's a hyperlink there. There's a URL, which is right off of Realtor.com under research. They have an area called cross-market demand. And why do I care about this? One of the things that we have learned as we've studied markets for the last couple of years, especially as people have changed how they work, how they play, how they commute, is that cross-market demand has expanded the real estate professionals' active marketplace. And being able to find that data is actually a very powerful marketing and lead generation advantage. Let me show you what I mean by that. If you go to that hyperlink on Realtor.com, it actually brings up a national map. And on the national map, you can actually type in your state and your county. And one of the most interesting things that you will notice is that this will actually show you, as far as Realtor.com is concerned, who's looking in your county from other states and counties. So here I just did Las Vegas. I just did basically Clark County. And I said, who's looking at Clark County in order to potentially gauge if I've got some out of market demand that is searching my inventory, right? We always think like, oh, I've got to work with my local buyers. You know what? There are buyers now who don't have to necessarily be within commuting distance of their job. And if you look here, you can see very clearly that like 27% of all the searches for Clark County are coming out of Los Angeles. And another 4% are coming out of, Maricopa County, and then Cook County, and then New York, and then Orange County, and then, so we've got California, we've got, New York, we've got Illinois. They're all looking at, Clark County. They're all looking at Las Vegas. Now, why do I care to know about that? There's two strategic advantages when I can pull a cross-market search report like that. And by the way, that's free on Realtor.com. That's open to anybody right now. You just go under the research tab and you type in your county and you'll see it. Why do you care? Here are those two reasons. Number one, what percentage of my marketing spend might want to go to those counties? Do I want to do a little SEO? Do I want to do some social media marketing in that geography? Do I want to do some direct mailing? And then number two, there's the networking opportunity. Who do I know there? Are there people in my network, in my brand, in my Women's Council of Realtors or other sub council group within the realtor family that I could reach out to and say, hey, you know what? My friends in Illinois, my friends in Los Angeles, my friends in New York, I see a lot of cross-market traffic. Do you know anybody who you might want to refer to me? Do you know anybody who's thinking of, I'll just pick on Chicago. Maybe it's getting a little too chilly in the winters for them, and they might want to have a desert home or something like that. The idea is that this helps me adjust both my marketing strategy and my networking strategy, and it's free data by simply saying who's looking in my neighborhood from around the country. And since Realtor.com, compiles this in real time, this isn't old data. This isn't like a month, 2 month, 3 month, 5 month old report. This is changing all the time. So I can tell you here where I live in Las Vegas, pretty much 50% of the license plates are California license plates. A lot of Los Angeles that has interest in a second home or primary home here. And if I were actively trying to work real estate and I wanted to work some buyers, I want to work those buyers who are absolutely very motivated to be thinking about my marketplace, and out of market buyers are, maybe I want to find advertising venues to them, and maybe I want to be networking with colleagues in those areas to make sure I'm on the receiving end of all of those referrals. Okay, so those are the top 5 ways I think you can spark growth going into 2024. Now, you know me, I can never just give what I give at the office. So I've got one extra one. I have a bonus one. And then we're going to go into our Q&A session here with you. But I think it's important that you just add this extra one to your list, which is, don't forget to have on your plan for growth next year opportunities to recharge yourself. Right? You can go out there and study the consumer. You can get out there and, generate some leads. You can get out there and network, focus on those listings. All that's important. But ultimately, you've got to have the recharged and ready you. And one of the things I just want to remind you to do is also to get unbusy next year. Don't just get busy next year. Get unbusy. Have time to recharge, to get your creative side, your inspiring side going. Go look at some art. Go play some music. Go take some time off. Sleep in late a few times, right? Certainly not when I'm doing a webinar. Make sure you're on time for my webinars. But ultimately, make sure that there's plenty of you to go around. If you want to be in a growth mode, you've also got to make sure that the person who's going to be driving and implementing that growth, you, is as healthy and capable to capture all of that growth. So thank you all so much. This is a short 30-minute session. Don't go away if you want to stay for the Q&A portion. But let me just remind you all that all of these ideas were inside of that ebook. So if you need an extra copy of that ebook, you absolutely can download that. The link was in the chat room. The QR code is right back here up on the screen. Remember that there are many different ways that you can grow next year. I tried to just put 40 of my favorite ones together for you and talk about 5 of them this morning, but maybe you can adapt, tailor, and focus some of these a little bit to your personal needs. Thank you all for hanging out with me this morning. And